So yesterday, as you'll recall, I went through this historical examination, telling the story of how David Koch back in 1980, running for vice president on the Libertarian ticket, kind of laid out the right-wing billionaire perspective on America and the nature of our government, what our government should be like. And, pretty much in 1980, David Koch was arguing that we should go back to America pre-New Deal. That, when Roosevelt created, the Securities and Exchange Commission, it should just go away. The Food and Drug Administration should just go away. The Environmental Protection Agency should just go away. I may be wrong on some of the details of my list of agencies that he thought should cease to exist. You can read the list in yesterday's Hartmann report. But in any case, yesterday I laid out how, certainly many of the Republicans in the House are dancing to the tune of these billionaires who think that our government is way bigger than it should be. Government spending represents 20% of the GDP of this country right now. They want to take us back down to around 2 or 3%, which is where we were before Franklin Roosevelt. But there's another possibility, and it doesn't conflict with the one that I just laid out. I mean, it's entirely possible it'll be both. And that other possibility is one that an investigative journalist by the name of Dave Troy, I mentioned this yesterday, he was tweeting about, and his tweet intrigued me. I mean, his tweet, he said, quote, Putin and others in his milieu well remember what Russia defaulting on its debt was like in 1998. Now it seems they feel like it's payback time, as many of them feel that default was something engineered by the U.S. between 89 and 98. And I thought, could it be? I mean, is it possible that some of these Republicans who are refusing to seat Kevin McCarthy are doing so because basically this is prep for basically what's probably going to be June, July, August, maybe even September, probably September, this summer, early fall, when the United States hits the debt ceiling. And, they're rehearsing, basically, how to shut down the government to throw the United States into default. Well, throwing the United States into default would have horrible consequences. I mean, Mark Zandi, who's the chief economist for Moody Analytics, told CBS News that it would instantly, or more or less, wipe out as many as 6 million jobs, destroy $15 trillion in household wealth. Unemployment would spike to 9%. By the way, the unemployment numbers were out this morning. The economy is still doing well. The job wage growth, has basically stalled out. And so that's why the stock market is up today, because all the big corporations are figuring that their employees are not going to be getting more raises going forward, and their profits then will begin to recover, and thus their stock prices go up. But anyhow, the exact opposite of that would happen if we were to default on our national debt, which we've never done before. We came close to it in 2011, and the effects lingered for 2 years. And those effects, that was 2012 was the re-election of Barack Obama, and that year the Democrats had a real tough time because they got a lot of crap from the Republicans and American voters because of what happened back in the day, because of the crushing the economy essentially that had happened as a result of freezing the thing. So anyhow, I went through. So Dave Troy comes out and says, they're doing it to help Putin. I had said yesterday they're doing it to help the billionaires. So I was kind of skeptical of his claim, but I thought I would fact check it. In fact, I told you yesterday that I intended to do that. It took me about an hour to go through, with a search engine, and I've been using Neva, by the way. You should check it out, NEVA.com. And I plugged in one at a time the names of all 20 of the people who voted no on Kevin McCarthy yesterday. And then also, in addition to their name, in quotes, the word Russia, in quotes. And, what I found was pretty startling. Andy Biggs voted against legislation to document Russian war crimes in Ukraine, as did Paul Gosar and Scott Perry. Matt Gaetz, Dan Bishop, Paul Gosar, Ralph Norman, and Scott Perry all voted against suspending normal trade relations with Russia and Belarus. Dan Bishop, Matt Gaetz, Andy Biggs, Paul Gosar, and Chip Roy all voted against a bill to ban imports of Russian oil and gas. Those four also voted against legislation to strip Russia of most favored nation status by the WTO. Paul Gosar and Matt Rosendale both voted against a resolution that reaffirmed U.S. support for Ukrainian sovereignty. John Breachin is new to Congress, but when he was asked by his hometown paper about whether we should support Ukraine, he said, "My position is I would not have voted for funding of war." Michael Cloud tweeted, "The Biden administration has ignored a year-long invasion of our southern border, but is considering risking the lives of U.S. soldiers to protect Ukraine's border? Ukraine is thousands of miles away," end quote. Voting against Sweden and Finland joining NATO, a pet Putin peeve, were Michael Cloud, Andy Biggs, Dan Bishop, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, Bob Good, Ralph Norman, and Chip Roy. And, you know, the list just goes on. I won't bore you with the whole long list. It occupies about half of my op-ed today. But, you know, none of this proves that, you know, Putin's whispering in anybody's ear over in the House Republican caucus. But what it does demonstrate, and why I think Dave Troy's ideas we're taking seriously, what it does demonstrate is that both the billionaires and Putin would benefit, you know, probably are benefiting from this process that is happening right now, and will benefit or would benefit if this summer, and, you know, remember, you heard it here first, it'll be, you know, 7 months from now. But if this late summer, early fall, they can actually engineer a default on the U.S. debt for the first time in world history.